What's up, Narwhals? In this video, I'm going to walk you through the first writing assignment associated with the AOW Animal Friends. If you haven't completed the annotations for Animal Friends, that's what you should be doing first. Your entire article should have margin summaries, underlining of key ideas, and anything you were confused about should be circled and defined in the margin. If you're ready, proceed with this video. If not, pause, focus on the annotations, and then come on back. Well, now that you're done with your annotations, let's take a look at the writing piece. So when we do these AOW writing pieces, I try to give you as much choice as possible. Sometimes that looks like different types of writing pieces. Other times, like right now, I'm going to focus you into one type of writing piece, a narrative or a story, and you're going to have tons of choice inside of that one piece I'm making you write. Let's take a look at our task. So our task for this writing piece is to write a narrative or a story relating to the article. Your narrative should include a few relevant connections to the article. Your story should be generally realistic, though if you want to, you can have the animals think and have them talk to each other. If you're going to go that route, that's okay, but you can't have anything else unrealistic happen. Just have the animals talk to each other so they can communicate their thoughts and feelings and what they want. So you need to do something that relates to the article. That could be another number of different things. You could write about this specific animal shelter in Kenya. You could write about an animal shelter in Downingtown. You could talk about animal research. You could write from the researcher's point of view. You could write from a volunteer's point of view. You could write from an animal's point of view. There's lots of different choice here. You got to tell a story that reflects that you just read this article about whether animals are friends or not. You have a number of different choices to actually pursue that and write the story. So you know your task has to be to write a story, and it's got to have something to do with animal research or taking care of animals or observing animals or animals becoming friends, something like that. In addition to that requirement, here are some other requirements. And heads up, the top one, the ELA special requirements, they do often change. Pretty much every article or every other article, they're going to change it up. This time, ours are to use any single one hoot vocabulary word and highlight it red. In addition to that, I need your writing to be multi-paragraph. You can't just turn in a giant block of text. I will hand it right back to you, or I will unsubmit it and say, yo, you didn't meet one of the basic requirements. So your special requirements for this assignment, again, use any single one vocab word from hoot, and you need to break this into multiple paragraphs. The ELA special requirements will change and rotate, but these, starting with the editing requirement, are pretty much going to always be the same. You need to write a first draft with a quick self-edit for silly, careless, and confusing for me to read mistakes. So give it a quick read through and make sure it all makes sense. That is the requirement. We aren't bringing it to another draft. We're not peer editing. All you're doing for most of these writing assignments, at least at first, is to just write that first draft. Your font should be the default Google Docs font, which is Arial size 11, and the length requirement, I want single spaced, and if you're in those periods, meet that length requirement. If you're in these periods, meet this length requirement. You got to figure out which period you're in. And most importantly, your writing should consistently relate to the prompt and article. There shouldn't be any unrelated or silly nonsense parts. There shouldn't just be a random thing about Fortnite in there. You shouldn't just be bringing up your grandpa all of a sudden. The focus of the article should be on this prompt that you are writing a story about something relating to the article we just read. So this story must only relate to, with no silly unrelated parts, to the prompt that you need to write a story either about animals being friends or animal researchers or the stuff I said earlier. Some of us love writing, and some of us come up with creative ideas right off the bat, and it's very easy. But I get that for other people, it's not always that easy. So on Schoology, or wherever I posted this assignment, you are going to see a number and a variety of supports. I have some light supports with just some basic ideas of things that might trigger you to begin to start writing. If you want some more, I have some medium supports that give you plot ideas, and they go into a little bit deeper about things you could write about. If you want maximum supports, at the bottom of the page, there is something labeled optional maximum supports, and that's going to give you the most help. That's going to tell you what each paragraph should be and give you some sentence starters and push you in the direction to add more details. If you feel like you're like, oh, I'm just overwhelmed by the story that I have to write, this would probably be a good place to start. Except that because this is the very first AOW writing piece, I'm going to give you another maximum support option right now in this video. So if you feel like you're good and you know how to write this story on your own and you don't want me to help you and give you ideas, you want to do this on your own, I give you a pat on the back for that, but that doesn't need to be you. If you want a little bit more help, check out the next part of this video and you're going to get more help to help you get this story on paper, and you'll hopefully have some fun writing it. For the rest of this video, I'm going to walk you through paragraph by paragraph how you could write a story about volunteering at an animal shelter. If you're an animal fan, this is going to be fun and easy. Even if you're not a big animal fan, I think this is going to be easier than a lot of stories you might have written in previous classes, because we can easily imagine some of the things that need to happen in an animal shelter to help out these animals. So if that sounds interesting to you, stick with me. And we are starting off with our intro paragraph. So the main purpose of the intro paragraph is to introduce the setting, introduce our protagonist, and basically let the reader know what this story is going to be about. I'm going to go through all of these supports, the sentence starters, checklist, and idea bank for this intro paragraph, but for the sake of time, I won't do it for the future ones. You'll have to pause and read them yourself. I'll talk about them a little bit, but I won't go in full detail like I am right now for this intro paragraph. So if you needed a sentence starter to begin your story, how about, when I first walked into the shelter, I saw. Or, on my summer break, I decided to. The shelter looked. I was ready to start and noticed. Some other stuff you might want to do, you could talk about how the shelter looks. You could introduce yourself as the volunteer. You could talk about why you decided to help, or why your character, your protagonist, decided to help at this shelter. You could set a happy mood for the story about trying to let the reader know this is going to be a volunteer story where we are playing with puppies and kittens, and it's going to be a nice light story. You could also include these ideas. You could mention the bright, colorful walls. You could mention the friendly staff that works there. You could mention your protagonist's excitement to work with specific animals or perform specific tasks or learn certain things about animals or veterinarians or researchers or whatever you're doing. And you could also talk about a variety of different animals who are being helped at the shelter in different areas: cats, dogs, rabbits, whatever is a realistic animal that might be at an animal shelter. Once you're done the introduction, you want to move on to paragraph 2, your first body paragraph. And the suggested topic for this is the first volunteer activity you take part in. Again, I'm not going to read all these. You can pause and read them all, but I'll give you a couple. Maybe your first sentence of the second paragraph is, my first job was to, and maybe you're talking about feeding pets. That's from the checklist. Maybe you're also mentioning that you met a specific particular dog or cat that you really liked, and you could talk about what they were like and what you liked about them. So you want to fill out this paragraph with details about things that you saw, things that you did, things that you learned. And if you run out of ideas, you can always return back to this list, or really a couple of the previous ones I have on Schoology or in this video, to give you more ideas. And we are moving on to the second body paragraph, or the third paragraph of this writing piece. If you're sticking with me, maybe you move chronologically throughout the day and you say, after lunch, I started to, and you describe a new activity. You could describe this second different job, like walking dogs. That's from the checklist. Or maybe you have someone that runs the shelter start explaining why it's important to do these things. You might also want to change up the animal. Like maybe this paragraph, you talk about helping out puppies versus kittens, and then go into detail for 2 or 3 sentences explaining what that looks like and why it's different for each animal. So your first body paragraph was about one volunteer activity, and the second body paragraph is about a different volunteer activity. And now we're moving on to the fourth paragraph of the story, or body paragraph 3 if you've been sticking with me. This one's basically the same. You're going to set up a new event, but I want you to add a conflict into this one, just a tiny little conflict into this one. So if you want to jump right into the conflict, you could say, later I had a small problem when, and maybe you mention how there's an issue with a cage and you weren't quite sure how to fix it, so you had to reach out to another volunteer to help. Or maybe you notice there's an animal that's being left out and you want to do something to encourage that animal to be included, or maybe you do something to support that animal and help it feel more included. You could describe your friendship with the pets. You could also maybe try to find, there's a great one down here, solving a puzzle, like finding out where a cat hid. That would be a fun paragraph, to realize that this cat is missing and it's up to you to figure out where it is to make sure that it gets its dinner. This paragraph, like I said, it's basically the same as the previous ones, but I would like you to come up with a problem that your character overcomes. I mentioned a couple. I think the cat one is a good one, but you could also notice maybe there's a puppy that's being left out or something like that. Oh, hurts my heart to even think about it. Maybe a puppy is being left out, and you, as the protagonist, take actions to make sure that that puppy is supported and feels like they are part of the group. Pairing it up with a different, friendlier dog, like in the article, might be a good idea. So, in this paragraph, come up with another event and introduce a conflict. All right, guys, you are almost done. We are at the conclusion paragraph. And in this paragraph, we're basically going to summarize what we did throughout the day and then reflect on it or share with the reader how we think about it now that we've gone through these experiences. If you want a sentence starter, a good one would be, as the day ended, I thought about. If you want some ideas, here's some from the checklist and the idea bank. You could simply summarize all the activities that you did, all the volunteer activities you did in a new and different way. You could talk about the new specific skills that you learned. If you want, I think a good direction to go to wrap it up with the last two sentences is to talk about how you feel accomplished for having completed all these tasks. Or maybe you found a special bond with an animal and you end up adopting it. Or you might just reflect on the importance of volunteering and say, I never knew how much it would change me to blah or something like that. I also threw on this slide the editing requirements just to make sure you don't miss anything. Your ELA special requirements reminder is that you need to have one single hoot vocab word in there. It also must be multi-paragraph, but if you've been sticking with me, you should have 5 paragraphs by now. There's also that the how the page setup should be and the length requirement and the focus requirement there. Make sure you're meeting all that. But if you've been sticking with me, hopefully you came up with a good, easy to write story that also connects in some way to the AOW that we did.